Hey everybody. Okay, I'm out here with my Doctor Who cup, where the TARDIS is vanishing from its suburban London square and is reappearing in the depths of space. It's a magic cup, and you're probably wondering, what does my cup have to do with deductive and inductive thinking, which I'm about to describe to you? And in fact, it's got nothing to do with it at all. So, let's talk about deductive and inductive thinking. Deductive thinking is like mathematical reasoning. It starts with general principles. For example, the Earth is the center of the universe. And then it reasons downward and arrives at conclusions based on this generally known fact or premise. You probably noticed there's a problem with that, though, didn't you? So, yes, our ancestors all thought that the Earth was at the center of the cosmos, which to me is a very reasonable conclusion to draw. And yet, in the end, it didn't work out, did it? We couldn't fit the data that we kept getting about this universe that we live in into that old Greek and biblical model. And so eventually we had to chuck that out, because sometimes with deductive reasoning, where you start with a premise and then you apply a specific phenomenon to the premise and then you draw conclusions from it, it doesn't work because your first premise is wrong. This is the danger of deductive reasoning. We may think we're right, but we're not. So how do we correct ourselves with our reasoning? This is where inferential thinking often comes in. Now, inductive or inferential thinking is where you begin with something that intrigues you. It's something big but messy. It's phenomenon. And you can't quite understand what's going on with it. But the more you examine the data, the more you're able to begin formulating hypotheses, which are basically educated guesses, testing those hypotheses, and then maybe beginning to arrive at some certainties, and then working from those and going back to your data. And who knows, eventually you might figure out that the sun is the center of the solar system, like Copernicus did. Now, inferential thinking is good for thinking outside the box. It's good for drawing new insight and deeper conclusions about the world. So, the greatest thinking that's gone on, at least in among Western people, in the last centuries, has largely been inferential. And when I say that, I think of Einstein's theory of relativity. I think of Darwin's theory of evolution. And I think of course, Copernicus and his recognition that it was, in fact, the sun that was at the center of things in our solar system and not the Earth. So, again, to sum up, inferential thinking is looking at the data, formulating hypotheses, trying out conclusions, seeing if they fit in with the data, and working your way up to a new kind of certainty, which may end up being a brand new deductive principle that we reason from. So, the opposite is deductive thinking. And deductive thinking is top-down, where we start with a known principle. The classic one from the ancient Greeks is all men are mortal. I think we can all get on board with that one. We might disprove it at some point, but seems to hold steady. All people will die. All beings will die. Then, based on that general principle, we bring in a specific, which is Socrates is a man. So you see we have general principle, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Bang, we get the conclusion. Socrates will die like the rest of us. So, top down, bottom up, deductive, inductive. Now, we're going to be practicing a bit of both, but we're going to especially pay attention to inductive or inferential reasoning. And we're doing that in two ways. The first is riddles, right? Okay. We did our riddles last assignment, last module. And you notice what you had to do to solve them was, it was almost like taking all the facts and beginning to juggle them. And you get them up in the air and you test them out and you see how they fit together. And eventually you might have an insight where you break through and you work out, oh, okay, this is the principle, or the deductive, like first principle, which explains the entire riddle. For example, the first one is the hardest, and I'm trying to open it up here where I can share it with you. Just a second, please. I'll do it from memory. Insubstantial, I can fill worlds, is how it begins. So we get a really big general picture. And then it goes on to describing other characteristics. It fills cathedrals, it haunts islands, it calms the passion of kings. And as you were going along, you were making inferences, weren't you? You were formulating hypotheses. And you're saying, okay, does this fit? How does this, what's the overall principle that explains this? Now, if you knew your Bible and Shakespeare, you would have solved it, because haunts islands is from The Tempest. Calms the Madness of Kings is from the Bible, where David calms the madness of Saul. Feeds the Affectionate, chorus is from Twelfth Night, where if music be the food of love, play on. Oh, I just gave it away, didn't I? Yes, the answer was music. And Cotton tends to give the final big clue at the conclusion of his riddles, where he says, I can't be seen, but I can be noted. So probably some of you cracked it. Others of you, may have tested it out and ended up saying something like God or love, which isn't bad. But again, when we're doing inferential reasoning, we're working on focusing in on what fits just right. And then we make our hypothesis. Okay, now, we've practiced some inferential reasoning with the riddles, and now we're moving on to our assignment, The Lost Tribe, where we're going to be looking at a big riddle, which is essentially, it's a thought experiment. It's got nothing to do with reality. It's just a big riddle. And in it, you're going to practice inferential reasoning to come to hypotheses or tentative conclusions about this culture. Some of your conclusions will be stronger than others. When you work from the evidence, and only from the evidence, you'll begin to be able to formulate levels of certainty. So, for example, it seems pretty clear that this tribe is vegetarian. They don't eat meat, even though they have domesticated animals around them. There's really strong evidence that because of their religious beliefs, which you can also infer have to do a lot with peace and nonviolence, they don't take the lives of animals. These are easy conclusions to draw. And using the evidence from your list, your riddle list of the different characteristics of the tribe, you can make your hypotheses. Now, it's good to clarify whether it's a strong conclusion that you'd bet the farm on, or it's one that's like, hey, this is tentative, I'm not positive, we need more data, however, it's suggestive. So, for example, I have the hypothesis that the Lost Tribe actually was a group of hippies who, in the early 1970s, when they saw everything going bad, they all got in their VW vans and they drove off into the Mojave Desert and disappeared. And from there, their descendants, they've been creating this ideal utopia out there. Why do I say that? Well, they've got books. Books don't come from hunter-gatherer cultures. They've got very developed agriculture. Also not precisely a characteristic of a tribe. Tribes are hunter-gatherer. They also have some other arts that are pretty highly developed. Apparently they're very good with irrigation, too. All of these things suggest actually an advanced civilization, so-called advanced civilization, that made an interesting move and renounced war and removed themselves. It's a hypothesis. Do we know if it's true? Absolutely not. But it's not fiction. I want you to notice that. I can argue that based on the evidence. And I can be clear, look, this is a hypothesis. It's not certain. However, based on this evidence, we might conclude or suggest that this tribe get the idea. So you can have whole scales of certainty running through your evaluation here, your analysis. One other point about this big riddle. Do not write fiction, okay? You're crunching the data here. Do not tell me about how you ended up encountering this tribe and danced the sacred wah-wah dance beneath the moon to the banana god. I don't want to hear that stuff. No fiction, okay? This is all based in analysis of the data, but that's where you can get creative. There's a lot of room for that. And there's a lot of room for anthropological thinking here. So have fun with your practice of inferential reasoning. And I look forward to seeing where it goes. There's no sort of limit on this. And in a way, there are no right answers. There are only answers that you can support with data. Okay. All right. That would be all. Good luck with this.